Okay, so we're on. This week, we have with us Mr. Wesley Kwok from Nodus Watches, all the way from the City of Angels itself, Los Angeles. Wes, welcome, mate. How you doing?
It's good to be here. Nice and wet, nice and grey. That's how you guys welcome me here.
January in England, mate. You can only expect one way.
Yeah.
So you got into town last week, I think. You had a few days.
Yeah. Spent some time in London with the girl, and then came up here to see you.
Amazing.
And after this, I have a couple other stops before I head back home.
Epic.
Yeah.
So you're doing a little bounce around Europe, I think, mate.
Yeah, a little bit. It's it's the nature of this business means I get to do work and play kind of at the same time, kind of infused with each other.
Don't tell too many people that. Yeah. Everyone will try and get into it. But I know exactly what you mean. So Wes, essentially, mate, when we have guests on, what we like to do is go back to the very beginning, back to the start. So if you could tell us a bit about you, who you are, where you grew up, and then we can get into the watchmaking journey that you're on from there.
So like every good watch origin story starts with your dad.
Okay.
So my dad was U.S. Navy. He was into watches back when he was in the Navy.
Yeah.
And so I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, because he was stationed at Kings Bay, which was close-ish.
Yeah.
And so when I was born, my mom was like, I'm not raising two kids, me and my older brother. I'm not raising two kids by myself. So you have to get out. You have to get into something else where you don't have to be on a boat for 9 months out of the year.
Okay.
I'm sure you know how that feels.
Yes. Yes.
So he transitioned out of the Navy and kind of lost a lot of the hobbies that he picked up when he was in the Navy, but went into corporate finance, and that took him across the world. The traveling didn't stop when he left the Navy, but the difference was he got to bring his entire family with him. So I lived in places like Singapore, in Beijing. Beijing is where I actually met my co-founder, Cullen.
Okay.
We grew up playing guitar together, got really deep into the weeds. We had that personality where like when we got into something, just became obsessive about it.
Yeah.
Ended up building our own guitars, building our own studio like this.
Wow.
Recording albums, playing gigs all over the city. And then fast forward, we kind of went our separate ways during college. And then fast forward to 2016, I moved out to LA to kind of get in the music industry. Within a week, I was like, I don't want to be in this industry.
Okay.
So Cullen and I reconnected and ended up designing a watch.
Right.
And then the rest is history.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, you're clearly from good stock, a Navy man. So
cheers to that.
To your dad.
Yep. This is it's just water. It's brown water.
This is a Dalmore 12.
Yeah.
If you're coming on the podcast, this is how you do it.
Oh yeah.
It's been a while since I've had one of those. I'll put airs on your throat, which is exactly what I like.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. So yeah, good choice, and thank you for bringing it, mate.
For sure.
You mentioned that in the music stuff. Now, you got to LA, and within like a week, you realized you don't want to be in the music scene. Can you give us a bit more meat on that bone, mate? I mean, what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, it was, for as long as I can remember, I always thought that I was going to be sort of the next John Mayer. That was my goal. I wanted to just be a musician, and I'm a big Mayer fan. So I love the way he plays, the way he writes. And that was my goal going into Berkeley. I went to Berkeley because he went to Berkeley.
Okay.
Ended up trying to find all of his professors and studied with all of them. Yeah. Just got to a point where I wanted to be the best guitar player I could possibly become. And then when I got into the real world, it's nothing at all like what you would think, right? Naturally, right?
Yeah.
And I realized quickly that I had always done music for myself, and then all of a sudden having to try to sell myself kind of ruined it.
Okay.
It just kind of made me feel like, the music is no longer the priority. Now making money is the priority.
Okay.
And and I guess watches, it was the new passion that I found, right? When music went from a passion to work, then I needed to find something to fill the passion void, and that was what watches was. And to me, I was willing to make watches work because it felt like I could express myself still, like in a way that music let me do that, but it didn't feel like I was losing my soul to try to sell these things to people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Something you touched on there was really interesting. It's when the passion becomes work.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's a theme that happens across almost everyone really in our space. No matter what you're doing or what arm you're in on it, watches are an emotive thing. And it, generally speaking, if you're in this industry, it's because you have a passion about it. And then suddenly it does become work in many ways. But you still, I understand it from a music aspect, because you still maintain that creative element. You still get an outlet. You still get the opportunity to express yourself through what is, this is the same expression just through a different medium.
Exactly. Yeah.
So at what point did you become a watch guy? Was this while you were at Berkeley? Is it while you're, okay.
Yeah. Pretty much right when I got into Berkeley. So when I graduated high school, my dad wanted to congratulate me by getting me a watch, and it wasn't anything particularly special. But it was a nicer watch than just like a Timex or something. It was a Tissot, like a department store Tissot. And it was really well made, and that was the watch that I wore pretty much throughout college. And really the watch I got after that was 4 years later when Cullen bought me a Ray, an Orient Ray. So yeah, I mean, once you get deep in the weeds, at least we found ourselves going back to the beginning, starting to learn from the entry level Japanese, and then getting into modding, and then into micro brands, and into the, mid tier entry level Swiss, and just kind of like going from the beginning all the way through. And now, I guess not everyone has the ability to say they're creating watches now, but for me, the stage that I most enjoyed in my watch collecting journey was the micro brand stage. Right. So brands like the OGs, right? Mark II, Raven, Helios. Those are the brands to me. And that was a segment of the market that to me was the most interesting. So it felt like when we started Nodus, it was kind of easier in a way, just because I had a deeper understanding of what these brands did and the people that ran the brands. I listened to every interview that they did, read every article about every piece of work that these guys did. I'm lucky now I can call them friends, but back then they 100%. Were just like heroes that just kind of were in the ether, just like floating somewhere. And
I suppose you're kind of uniquely positioned as well in the sense of, like you mentioned there, Mark II. So Bill had sort of busted onto the scene really early 2000s.
Like 2004, I think he started with Seiko modding.
And he was a big forum guy for a while, and then that became something else. But with obviously the internet becoming its thing around that time, all of these conversations have been captured and recorded. So everything's there, and you can refer back to it. Same as guys can now, and they probably will in this podcast, hopefully in a few years to come. The next generation of guys are going to come through and be like, use you as a mark, and be like, I want to study what Wes did. Do you know what I mean? Touch wood, mate. That's how it goes. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, you're mentioning that path there. Fuck me, what a guy to emulate. Do you know what I mean? Or work towards. Bill, like what he does, and now he's done it with Mark II. And
and I think people don't realize the importance of the work that he did, because no one was really into micro brands back 100%. Then. It was like a very, very niche thing, right? Whereas now we see, like Idris Elba was wearing a Brew the other day. Did you see that?
I didn't, but
and then like we had the privilege of collaborating with Matt Farah, and I don't think that could have been done in like 2010, even 2015, probably not.
No,
right? We were seen as mom and pop shops literally up until probably COVID started. Then people started taking micro brands a little bit more serious. I
think you're right there, mate. And I think again, it's that journey that sort of the pioneers kicked off on in the early 2000s, and now it's transitioned us into this space. And I think what that's done as well is develop this community or sub-community, of micro brands and things like that are now, it's exciting. It's an exciting space. There's so much innovation. There's so much new stuff. And even when you think that, something's been done before, or everything's been done before, something pops up, you're like, shit, how did that this is where it's really, really exciting, to follow that space. So looking at the microbrand stuff and be, looking at that area for you, looking at getting into this, I can totally understand why that would have been an interesting, place to focus on, or the most interesting aspect of it. So you're at Berkeley, you've got into watches, you're studying, what the what the pioneers have done, you know, in this space. At what point do you decide, right, okay, it's now time for us to create or develop or grow into Nodus, right? When does Nodus get its inception, as it were?
Yeah, so when I first moved to LA, it was like September 2016.
Okay.
And we started like that week.
Wow.
Yeah, we had too many drinks probably.
Yeah.
And we were like, hey, we, you know, like Nodus was our version of getting the band back together, right? Because we grew up playing music forever, and I always knew that I was going to be working with Cullen on something. Didn't know what it was. Might have been a brewery, might have been a distillery, might have been a band again. But you know, one day we decided to just design a watch, and we designed it. And then, you know, I asked questions to him like, what do you think it would take to get this done? You know, how would you approach it if you wanted to actually make this watch? How much would it cost? Where would we go? Who would we talk to? And, you know, the plan was more along the lines of, why don't we just do this project together? Let's each make a watch, like friend watches, right? We'll each have one for each other, and then we'll just go off and, you know, get a big boy job. And we found out real quick, you can't make 2 watches at a time. You have to make, you know, 500 watches at a time.
Of course.
So the only logical thing we could do at that point was make 500 and sell 498 of them. And we'll keep 2 for ourselves. Yeah, okay. So it did well enough where we're like, all right, I guess people want to know more about what we can do. Maybe we should design a second watch, and then a third watch. And then by the 4th watch, it was like, all right, people are paying attention. And, you know, I think people respect the work that we do to a point where, you know, let's go all in. And that was probably like 2018, mid 2018 was when we were like, all right, now let's leave everything else that we're doing on the side and focus all on this.
Yeah. Yeah. And that journey then, so essentially you've looked at a number of your first releases there, and I condensed them into like 2 or 3 sentences. Yeah. So my job is to try and pull some more detail out on that, mate. So you guys have come up with a design. You've gone through some sort of iteration process and trying to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. So that first watch, where does the influence lie on that? How did you reach the design language? How did you reach the final iteration of that watch and decide, right, okay, I think this is the one? Because as you say, you can't just go and make 2 watches. Sure. You would have had to have commit to 500 pieces. Yeah. And that's not an inexpensive thing to do. Yeah. So in order to get there, in order to make that happen, you've kind of really got to be confident in the design you've put together and how you think the market's going to receive that.
Yeah, well, the market back then was also very different, right? There were a lot of brands, there were a lot of Kickstarters, but no one was really, like, there were no runaway home runs, right? Like you had the C4th from Helios. That was kind of the first home run that I've ever seen where it just kind of sells out like that. And that's kind of like the norm now, right? Brands just launch a thing and it sells like, 500 in a couple minutes. Yeah. Yeah. And for us, that was never our intent. So for us, what we've always loved, and this is a little ironic too, because we make only like sport watches, but we liked dressier design language. So we put out a dressy diver. Yeah. That was kind of like modeled after the like Blancpain dive watches. And that was kind of an experiment to us. We never really wanted that to be our main thing, but we needed something to kind of learn about supply chain, learn about the market, learn about, even how to pay ourselves, how to file taxes, how to incorporate an S Corp. Yeah. So all these, that was like our practice run. So yes, it was our first watch, but we don't actually look at it as our first watch. Our second watch is really our first like watch. Yes. And that's the retrospect. Okay. Which we still have in our collection. Yeah. And the way we look at our watch releases it's kind of like how we looked at our music and how kind of like a musician looking at their albums, right? Like a John Mayer type of figure will go through a super poppy album, then a more bluesy album, and then a really country album. And it's all still John Mayer, but even though, the people that loved Continuum, for example, might not have liked Born and Raised. So we kind of had that mentality when we're designing a watch. Yeah. So the Retrospect is a very vintage inspired watch. Contrail is a very modern watch. Yeah. Avalon's like a beefy diver, and it's not meant. Neither one of these watches by themselves were ever meant to be a wide mass appeal to any market. It was a very like niche idea that we had, and And only now we're kind of transitioning into a different phase in our company where we're looking at a more platform approach where we build out one platform and iterate on that platform many times. It's like kind of putting the modding mindset back into our design language where it's one platform, but we can make 5, 6, 7 different models based on just one platform.
Yeah. That makes a bunch of sense.
Yeah.
Again, it makes it's an easier, easy is the wrong word. That lends itself, I think, in many instances, to a bit more creativity.
It does, yeah. And in a weird way, it's more challenging too, right? It's more challenging, but more fun because now you do have creative constraints, right? You can't change this, you can't change that, but you can change this and you can change that. Yeah. And it makes the design process a little bit more fun.
This is where Easter eggs are born, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This really is where Easter eggs are born. Because as you said there, or I've said many times that, a watch it makes up X amount of real estate on your wrist, and generally speaking, most things have been done. There's 3 hands, it ticks or it sweeps, depending on what type of engine you've got in it. But when you start, if you're coming into this fresh, essentially you can make whatever you want, and just go any route you want and just create what you want to create. And there's an element to that. But when you start adding constraints around design or constraints around manufacturing process or constraints around anything, that to me, certainly for me, it makes the designer dig deeper into
figure out which avenues you can change, right? The things that you can do within the confines of whatever canvas you're working on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it makes for a better product. Yeah. I genuinely think it makes for a better product.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting transition. So you've gone from like, right, okay, so we're going to approach this from a musical standpoint and we're going to express ourselves to 2 or 3 different watches here. And kind of make them the best versions of what we can make them. You know what I mean? But they're identified as 3 different things, independent of each other, and they do their own thing. Yeah. And now you're coming in at it from a more platform approach. How do you anticipate this to grow and develop as time goes on? Are you looking at potentially getting like 3 or 4 different platforms you can work off and then make iterations of them on? Yeah,
that's the hope.
Okay.
It's ironically it's more expensive because when you do a platform approach, your manufacturing quantity goes up.
Yeah.
Right. Because you can't just make 100, sector fields and then 100, like you have to make 300 of each one that you want to make.
Yeah.
And, I think the benefit that we have coming from it from a musical standpoint is that we don't feel that creative constraint. Like we're unafraid of like doing something that doesn't have a Nodus design language. The sub has always looked like the sub. Yeah. And there's a beauty to that.
Yeah.
The Speedy has always looked kind of like a Speedy. Of course. And there's a beauty to that too.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't really have anything to model our design language after because we started in 2016. Like there's no history to pull from.
You're building it now.
We're telling our stories now. Yeah. And that gives us the ability to do things that we don't really need to make our contrail look like the contrail from 2017. Of course. Right? We don't need to make whatever comes next look like anything we've done in the past. And that's very freeing too.
Yeah.
Right.
That's that's exactly what it is. It's free and it allows you to really do what you want to do and be creative with it. And I suppose you're at a position now as well where you've been around for a little while. So you figured out what works, what doesn't work, what routes you kind of want to go down. But also you've kind of started to develop a customer base and you can understand what you guys are into. And what essentially the community is looking for. You know what I mean? And what that is and what that feels like. How do you as a brand approach that in the sense of you've got quite a lot of freedom there to go after because you're creating your own you're creating your own thing. You're going your own way, you're telling your own stories, you're developing your heritage now. So how do you monitor the watch community and apply that into your design language? How does that work? How does that have an impact? Did you look for trends?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely pay attention in that I have a lot of friends in the industry and just hanging out with them, getting dinner, getting drinks. Like, of course, the topic of watches will come up. So I kind of have an idea of what's going on. But like our focus really early on was always to make the best quality watch ever. And we invested a lot of time and money into building out our own robust supply chain, which is it's more, that's the approach that the big Swiss companies have, right? So for a small independent shop like ours, I think is quite a feat to be able to say that we have our own supply chain.
Yeah.
That we manage every aspect of it ourselves.
Yeah.
Again, something that Bill Yao, innovated.
Yes.
And like it's a hard job, but it's worth it, because now I think that the watch that we put out, or the watches that we put out, is an order of magnitude higher in quality than anything that you can expect to get out of a $500 to $800 watch.
I'd agree.
So I think that already set a standard for our customer base.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people that buy our stuff end up being the, $2,000-$3,000 collector coming down into our space. And it also gave us the ability to start the Design Lab program, which is a fairly new program. But, Matt Farah from the Smoking Tar was kind of our biggest collaboration last year.
Yeah.
And I think he trusted us because of that ability. Like we're able to do things fully custom at a level that I don't think many others are able to do at the scale that we can do it at.
Yeah.
And that made it a very easy collaboration for him to come in and, here's a design. All right, we turn around and just get it made and, turn it around within 7-8 months. And I think that helps us grow our market a lot, right? Because now we're being exposed to people that know how to look for quality.
Yes.
That are interested in things other than Rolex, other than Omega, but don't really know where to start. So we kind of are fitting that void as a gateway into the micro brands, the way that Bill Yao was like back in the early 2010s.
Wait, I see so much similarities in what you guys are up to and how he did it, and it's fascinating to see. Yeah. But you touched there on your quality, and I must admit, the quality is insane. It's absolutely insane.
Appreciate that.
I had a little play with that one on your wrist yesterday, and it blew me away.
Yeah,
absolutely blew me away.
Yeah, and I'm lucky enough now to be able to call Bill Yao a mentor, and I know that word makes him queasy. But shout out to Bill Yao. He's definitely going to be watching this. But he took out a lot of he took a lot of his time to guide us in making sure we didn't waste time doing things that he tried to do in Germany and in Switzerland and in Japan. And, a lot of the learnings that he had saved us a lot of time and heartache to get to where we're at now. So standing on the shoulders of my heroes is really why we're at this point now. And without Bill Yao and Jake, who you're also friends with,
of course.
Steve from Raven, like these are the guys that really put us, backed us in the very beginning and said, all right, don't do that, do that. Yes. That's cool. That's not cool. Introduce us to the right people. So I definitely owe a lot to them.
Mate, we stand on the shoulders of giants, as they say.
Yeah.
And the guys you mentioned there, Jake, Bill, guys over at Raven, 100%. There's pioneers in this game that have essentially facilitated the growth and development of the micro brand space. And they're kind enough and good enough to reach out to up and comers and pass that olive branch and share the knowledge, which is again, it comes back to this community piece that we see around watches and the watch game. And something I've talked about again before in this podcast is I want to see everyone do well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If everyone's doing well, the market's doing well. Consumers are happy, businesses are performing the way they should, creativity is flourishing, and it's great to see. So it's also great to hear that's happening the way I kind of knew it was, but very seldom do we get the opportunity to share that or those type of stories, in a public sphere. So that's epic. So Nodus, in the sense then, mate, you've gone through, or you've taken inferences from or guidance from others on how to lean out your processes, how to do things. You're now in a spot or in a position where I think arguably you're putting out some of the highest quality stuff on the market for any micro brand. And it really is exceptional stuff. Where do you go from here? What's the desire? How do you move forward with the brand? Are you looking to collaborate? Are you looking to further? I don't think you can get your process in any better and make the watches any nicer.
You can always be better.
You can always be better, of course. But
yeah, so there are a few things we're working on. So on the Nodus, like the watches side, we have more platforms to build out.
Okay.
So this platform here is unreleased. So this will probably be the first time it's on camera.
Yep.
This is the Control platform.
Yes.
Which, it's that was I think our third watch that we put out.
Yeah.
So we have a long wait list and people have been asking for it to come back for years now.
Yeah.
So we have other platforms to build out after this one.
This podcast is sponsored by zulualphastraps.com. Zulu Alpha Straps make some of the best watch straps in the market, and we do it all here in the UK by hand. As a listener of the Making Time podcast, you can enjoy 15% off on your next order by using the discount code MakingTime15. Your support makes this podcast possible, so please head over to zulualphastraps.com so we can continue to bring you fresh content. Now, back to the show.
We've been also focusing a lot more on R&D stuff, so kind of like Nodex actually would be a good example. Our in-house proprietary extension clasp.
Yeah.
And there are other things in the works, anti-shock, anti-mag, new crown system, new bezel system. So all these things that we want to kind of innovate, probably test it on Nodus so that we can fuck it all up and then start licensing the designs out to other brands.
Of course, yeah.
But so far we have some buy-in from pretty massive brands on Nodex, and if not on Nodex, some other design stuff that we're doing behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So that's that side of things. And then we also want to do more shows.
Okay.
But shows in the sense that it's not like a trade show like we're used to in the traditional sense where like we set up a booth and try to sell a bunch of watches.
Yeah.
There are going to be booths at the show. So it's called Intersect. Right?
Yes.
And really the idea behind Intersect is we want to be able to tell our story, but invite all of our friends and all the other micro brands. And, a lot of the times we bring in non-watch companies too. So a knife company or a pen company or a strap company and give them the exact same equal footing, same platform to tell their stories, tell it on their own terms and make it inexpensive for the brands and make it more like a party, right? No pressure to sell. Obviously, if you sell, then that's great.
Of course.
But the idea is for us to just throw a big watch party where we all get together with like-minded people who are passionate about the same thing and just get to know each other as people, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the big issue that a lot of our brands have, where we know our customers by invoice numbers, email addresses, Instagram handles, but we don't know, Darren the person.
It's part and parcel why this podcast exists.
Yeah.
That's one of the main drivers to get me to set this up, because over the last 5 years I've had the privilege of getting to know you guys. Do you know what I mean? And your stories are so interesting. It's fascinating to me, and unfortunately, no one really gets to hear them unless you're kind of either in that circle or you get stuck in an airport lounge with someone, you realize who they are. That's just the nature of it. Yeah. But the most interesting aspect for me on this is the stories, is the people. It's how did you get to where you're at now?
So we'd like to copy and paste that model on the Intersect model across the world eventually. Right now it's just in the US. Yeah. But like to your point, to create an environment where we can have these conversations with our customers and with other brands that are showcasing, and just make it more of a community instead of just a trying to sell things to people.
Of course. No, 100%. So Intersect so far, you've had a show in Dallas.
Yeah, Dallas, LA. So we started in LA in 2021. Okay. Coming out of COVID. And the idea behind that one was literally just, we've been locked down for a couple of years now, and, we all miss people. So let's get all of our friends in. Wind Up had been canceled for, a year and a half at that point. Of course. So just invited a bunch of our friends into LA and then threw a big party. And then eventually.
And where did you host that in LA?
It was in the West Side, at like a cocktail bar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. The year after that, we did it at a brewery. And then last year was our first expansion outside of LA. Okay. We went to Dallas. We partnered with Jack Mason to host it at their showroom. Yeah. And then we did it again in Long Beach in November. Nice. At just a cool venue. Yeah. We have one coming up March 23rd in Atlanta. Yeah. And that's going to be at a garage. And we'll have a website. By the time this goes live, we'll have a website and everything. So you can put it in the show notes or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, my dream is to bring this to London, or to the UK, broadly speaking. Dubai, Singapore. I want to go all over the world with this.
It's awesome to see that this. We had a chat about this earlier, offline, and there's so many folks who are trying to do this, and unfortunately it's always driven by a commercial aspect, and it kind of takes away accessibility of it for a lot of folks. I mean, you look at certain shows, I'm not going to name shows, but you look at certain shows and it's thousands and thousands and thousands to exhibit at them.
Yeah.
And it's just a non-starter for so many folks.
And if you can get in, it puts so much pressure on the brand to sell, because we're all small businesses, right? So it's a huge hit to our revenue, and like even just to break even at a show is a huge lift.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And it's being able to demonstrate an ROI, a return on investment. So, you know, for example, if you go into a show, you've got to take your team or you and one other probably to successfully, you know, cover your stand. You know, there's travel arrangements, there's accommodation, you've got to feed people, and there's so much stuff to cover off on these exhibitions or these functions. That for a micro brand or for an independent or for, you know, us guys in the smaller side of the, you know, the watch industry, it becomes difficult to do it, difficult to tell your story really. Because, you know, all the big guys want to be there as well. And they're willing to pay the premium to get there. So coming at it from your standpoint, where it's a bit more of a buy us for us type vibe. And I think you actively try and make that accessible for the brands as well on costings. And it's clear and
the way the show is run is really a group decision for pretty much everything, right? So we're on the board, and we also instated Jack Mason and Formex to be on the Intersect board. But if we ever find ourselves at a crossroads, we literally email all the showcasing brands and we're like, what do you guys think of this? Do you want this to happen? Do you want that to happen? Take a vote. It's like, you know, it's easy to run a democracy when it's 15 brands only, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, democracy, that's exactly what it should be. Like a higher council of elders. You know what I mean? Some way of doing it. But mate, it's also, I'm excited for that to seep out into Europe. I know you're looking at, you know, viable cities and spots now and things like that, and I'd be more than happy to assist in that journey with you.
Appreciate that
on the UK side of stuff. But yeah, that's going to be really interesting. That's, I think, mate, helped quite noticeably your brand and other brands be seen and heard as well, because that's been really picked up by the collectors. And I've seen a lot of interaction around the Intersect stuff online, and guys getting behind it, and that's the major difference, and that's what you want to see. It's a more of a personable meet and greet, or just buddies getting drinks. That's it's given me the chance to, you know, talk and work with other brand owners, other designers about things that we want to do. And they also ask us our opinion on things that they're doing in the future. And I think that's cool. I think the collaborative aspect is really what makes this job less like a job, feel more like fun, which ultimately I think is more sustainable. Absolutely.
And we have to band together at some point. You know, like it's not like we're not, we might be competing for the same dollars on paper. But it's not like the market isn't big enough where we can all win at the same time, right? We should be more invested in growing the size of the pie completely, like you were alluding to earlier, instead of making our slice bigger in a finite pie.
100%. No, I agree completely. And I love to see people doing well, because if they're doing well, the industry's doing well. If the industry's doing well, we're all doing well.
Everyone wins.
Everyone wins. And when you win, and when you're in a positive mental space from a business owner standpoint or a designer standpoint, you manage to pump out some of your best work. Do you know what I mean? Everything's vibing. And you've got this, I sound like a hipster there, don't I? Everything's vibing. Everything's flowing the way it should. Do you know what I mean? Things are ticking in, and you can come up creatively with some epic stuff. And particularly if you're working with other brands and collaborating on things, it gives you the ability to further develop or even think about things that didn't really make sense to you. We've got a massive amount of experience in this space, and folks sharing stuff. Why not? All that's going to do is bring everyone on. Like if I'm doing better, that's going to inspire you to do better. It's going to inspire the next guy to do better than the two of us. The guy after him is going to want to do better than the two of us, and then I've got to step my game up. So ultimately, the product goes through the roof. The customer experience goes through the roof. And we become the best versions of what we could possibly be in the desired profession that we're in. So that's a bit of a but
it's a hard mindset to get around when you're like either newer in the industry or you haven't really thought on an industry-wide scale because you're so focused on just, building your own business, designing your own watches. But like Jake and Bill have been talking about this for years.
Absolutely.
Like they've been talking about the pie itself has to get bigger. We have to band together and collaborate more. And, they're both very intelligent guys and probably way ahead of their time in this mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at a certain point, pretty much every brand, every micro brand, every independent brand is going to be at a point where they either join this collaborative and work together with other brands, right? Like the British Watchmakers Alliance is another sign of that happening, or they're just going to fade out, right? And you get to choose. You either join it or you're going to get pushed out.
You evolve or die.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of it. And, and it's better to build these relationships and have these conversations and get on with people and develop a community. That's the benefit and the beauty of this. When we were talking earlier, and it sort of goes back to the beginning of the conversation where a passion becomes work. It really is a passion, and a lot of us are involved in it through the passion standpoint, and that's the whole point of it. That's why we're here. That's why we do what we do. So to develop that passion and to grow it in not only the product but the relationships. That's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. As you know, mate. I mean, we've known each other a while, and I'm my family's and other watch companies' families are very close. Do you know what I mean? Like we've developed these relationships privately where we'll vacation together or we'll go out for dinner together and stuff like that. And it's interesting to see how this is happening all over the world. Like it's happening here, as you say, with the Watchmakers Alliance and the relationships we're harboring and fostering and growing and developing in the UK. But also you guys are doing it in the US. I'd assume there's a bunch of guys in Japan who are doing the same thing.
More than likely,
I'd assume there's a bunch of guys in France doing the same thing. Everyone's trying to do the same sort of thing because we've all reached similar conclusions. And this is where Intersect can be quite powerful, I think, because it's got the ability and because it's got a purity to it, it's got the ability to really cross borders and grow and develop into something that really is an international thing. I'm excited.
I mean, we named it Intersect for that reason, right?
100%,
And actually, that's what Nodus means too, right? So in a weird way, Nodus is intersect. Right. Intersect is Nodus. And like that's, it almost feels like that is our mission now to bring all the brands together and show the world that micro brands actually do have something cool to offer, right?
100%.
It's not just a mom and pop shop anymore.
So here's an interesting question for you, mate. And it's a little left of arc, as it were, but what constitutes a micro brand? When is a micro brand a micro brand?
Oh,
and when
dude,
does
I don't even know.
Being a micro brand.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. I think.
Thanks, bud.
So I think there are four different archetypes of a micro brand. Right. One, you have the military background, right? So brands like Sangin, Sterling, not Elliott Brown, but they're closely associated. And these are the brands that kind of know practically what a watch needs to have in the field, right? You also have a refounder, which is a brand like Vertex, Fears, right? They're kind of reviving an old brand. Or like Tornek Rayville, where he didn't own that brand, but he had a profound respect for what Tornek Rayville accomplished. So Bill Yao bought the brand and then is kind of paying homage to what they used to do. And then you have kind of like the low-hanging fruit, where it's a brand that started because either they had a lot of money, so it was easy for them to do, or they have a primary business that kind of supports the brand itself. So, the last one I think arguably would be on paper the most boring, right? The enthusiast, right? That's what we are. But in a weird way, that fourth archetype has the most to prove because we don't have the story, we don't have the history, we don't have the resources to do a lot of things that we want to do. So we almost have to do something more profound in, either the designs, the quality, something. We have to do something different, otherwise we'll just die out real quick. So I think those are the main four different categories of micro brand. In terms of volume, it's hard to say because a lot of people say, oh, you have to sell, less than 10,000 a year. You can only have, 2 or maybe 3 employees. But to be honest, all these rules on like Facebook groups, they're set by a bunch of idiots that don't really know what it's like to run a brand. Because like I know micro brands that are bigger than many major brands in terms of volume.
As do I.
Right. But so it's like that already destroys that whatever weird requirement that these nobodies are putting together. Yeah. So I don't think there's one definition, but I think broadly there are 4 categories of micro brand that don't fit, Omega, Rolex, Swatch Group type brands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there are even some micro brands that have shareholders.
Yeah.
It's like,
so at what point does a micro brand stop being a micro brand and hit this next level? I mean, is that clearly it's not based on volume, I don't think. And there's no real answer to this because it's not a defined thing. So what I'm trying to get to here is what your opinion is. You know what I mean? In the sense of, at what point do you, what comes next? So you start as a micro brand and then you become an independent and then you become I mean, is it when Swatch Group buy you out? I mean, what do you think that is?
I mean, the short answer is I don't know, right? Yeah, and I don't think we can ever know the answer to that, right? Part of what makes it interesting is that everyone has their own interpretation of what a micro brand is. Yeah. Everyone has their own expectations, right? Like there are people online that just still see micro brands as mom and pop shops.
Of course.
They are in denial that we're accessing the exact same supply chain as some of the bigger dogs. So, like all the requirements to be a micro brand that I see online are not like there's always going to be 1 or 2 examples at least that kind of break that requirement. So yeah, it's hard for me to say. I don't actually know the answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've thought a lot about it and I can't really think of what would make it a micro brand versus not a micro brand.
Wes, I think we have all thought about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those questions. It's kind of like, well, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
No one really knows. No one's got the answer to that.
Yeah. But I think it goes to show how dumb the word is. And like
100%.
Like it's a term that doesn't really mean anything at this point.
It strikes me in the same fashion, mate, as you'd have an independent brewery or breweries. And to me, a brewery is a brewery.
Yeah.
Do you make beer? Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. You're a brewery. How much beer do you make? Oh, well, we do, 500 casks a year. Okay, fine. So you're a small brewery.
Yeah.
How much beer do you make? Oh, 10,000. Okay, well, you're a big brewery.
Yeah.
Where does this independence thing come from? It's things get coined with terms and sometimes these things stick harder than I think they should have.
Yeah.
It's a phrase that bugs me a little.
Yeah.
And I'm always intrigued to talk to people and try and understand what their definition of it is.
Yeah.
Because it is so varying.
Yeah. I try not to think about it too much just because I feel like I'll end up becoming one of those keyboard warriors that's like, oh, it's just a fucking made in China bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to go down that route. I'd rather focus on building up Intersect and building up our Nodex and building up our platforms and doing this stuff that lights my ass on fire. Like, that's a lot more fun.
Yeah. No, I agree, mate. I agree. We need to focus on what we're doing, not what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's the key point here to take away from this. Something you've talked about a little in depth and you've mentioned when we were chatting again just then was supply chain and having ownership over that and accessing some of the same resources that the big dogs have had. I'm not going to go into the depth on that, mate, because a lot of that's your business and it's not. This isn't a how to start a watch brand podcast.
But the answer is don't. You don't want to.
What are the challenges you faced in that, mate? I mean, coming in and being essentially a guitar player who's just graduated, who wants to go out and make watches, to now having such a refined product and ownership over that supply chain. How have you fucking done that? How has that worked?
A lot of pain.
Yeah.
A lot of work, patience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing about supply chain is that it's also another one of those terms that don't really mean anything.
Yes.
Right. Because ultimately you can use the exact same factory as 3 different brands at 3 different price points. And they all make for all 3 brands, but they still make it at different standards.
Yeah.
So, they all share the same supply chain, but why are they making this at that level and this at that level at kind of the same price? Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of it was just networking.
Okay.
Like our first watch, I mean, probably our first like 3 watches were shit. And we had to go through all that shit and a lot of pain and just to learn what not to do. And it's almost like a process of elimination in our production, where we went through all these different OEMs, all these different factories, and we just said, all right, not that one, not that one, not that one. All right, maybe this one, we'll keep that one. But what it was there were things that we wanted to do creatively with our watches that a lot of factories either couldn't do, or they could do it if they bought a new machine or if they hired a new person. And there were just like a lot of weird limitations that would be either expensive or just not really realistic for us to do. So we kind of took our requirements and went and shopped it around. And that was the beginning of how we started breaking down our supply chain.
Okay.
And that flexibility is really our unfair advantage now, where we're able to do things that I don't think a lot of other brands can do, big or small. We're able to test at a level that I don't think a lot of brands could do, again, big or small.
Yeah.
And it's mostly because we enjoy it, right? Like we don't actually make a lot of money in the testing of cool things.
Yeah.
And 99% of the time, I don't think the market sees it or knows about it or cares about it. Sometimes we do cool new things in watches and it ends up not being a good choice. And then we learn the hard way why it was not a good idea. But like consumers don't really know what's so different about our watches, like technically, right? On a technical level, they don't know what's different about it. Not all the time, but a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
But for us, we just enjoy it. We enjoy like pushing the boundary of, oh, maybe the click can be dampened a little bit. What can we put in a watch to dampen a bezel click? Or how can we make a crown tube water resistant if you accidentally unscrew the crown? Like these like really weird niche problems that are kind of fun for us to try to explore and try to fix these issues.
Yeah.
A lot of the time we go to the factories and we say, how do we do this? And they're like, yeah, it's not possible. It hasn't been done before. But I'm like, all right, so how do we do it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's probably just a weird mentality that we have. We've always been this way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We like when we built guitars, for example, Fender wasn't putting out a guitar that I wanted to get. And we needed more specs in our guitars. So we were like, fuck it, we're going to build one. So we built our own guitars.
Yeah.
Right. So we just have that weird mentality in our head. No one can do it. We'll do it ourselves then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, there's a famous saying, mate, that I've carried through my life, aut viem invenium aut faciem, right? It's Latin. And Hannibal told Caesar that when he told him he couldn't take the elephants over the Pyrenees. And if I can't find a way, I'll make one. And that's something that's always stuck with me. I learned about that as a child, and it was quite an inspirational story when I was a kid, because I was like, how did this guy do that? How did he pull that? But he did. He pulled it off. Anything's possible if you're willing to commit the right amount of time, energy, effort, and in this industry, money. And you can make stuff happen. Great things happen.
Yeah.
And you know, everyone will tell you no, you can't. Everyone will tell you it can't be done. Everyone will tell you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
Frankly, if you think it can be done, if you got a vision or a drive or an idea of doing things, fucking get after it, make it work.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out.
Well, one of the brands that I really respect, is Rolex, just like everyone else. Everyone respects Rolex, but I think I have a respect for Rolex that comes from a different spot than most people, right? Most people look at Rolex and they're like, oh, the watch that was in that war, or, there's only 1,000 left of that watch, so I want that one, right? Like, people look at Rolex as a jewelry brand and they look at the stories that Rolex told. I look at Rolex and I'm like, wow, there are things happening in this watch that they don't talk about.
Of course.
Like that's what it excites me. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to be like that, I want to make innovations that will change the course of watch manufacturing. But I don't necessarily have to be the guy that's recognized for doing that.
I'm with you. Yeah. You want to have a watch, another watchmaker will pick up and go, how do you do that? Look at that. Look at this. Look at that. Almost where the Easter eggs are only there. It's a kind of a, if you know, you know. Yeah,
exactly.
Of course. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. And then so essentially, mate, I mean, we're all in business and we're all trying to fundamentally living out of what we do, and we all look for approvals in certain ways. What's really interesting from this conversation is the understanding I've developed with you is you're looking for equally, I think, as much as your customers' approval, but your peers' approval. You're striving for excellence. You're striving for success. You're striving to be and to develop things that all of your peers will acknowledge and recognize you as theoretically being an innovator for.
Yeah.
And that's admirable. Like that's epic. It was a fucking tough job.
Yeah. But it's not a good business decision either, but
it's a terrible one.
I never strive to be like purely business centric.
No.
And I'm a pretty shitty businessman, to be honest.
I'm the same.
So,
yeah. I'm the same. It's the minute this stops being fun, it's time to finish.
Yeah.
And I think something if you approach this in the right way, and you strive for exactly what you're striving for, the success will be a byproduct.
Yeah.
And the business success, by that I mean that, like, the fiscal element of it will be a byproduct. But it's not the main driver or the main focus. The main driver and the main focus is doing things no one else has done.
Yeah.
And doing things to a standard that have never been done before. And a byproduct from that is success. You know, and from a fiscal sense, from a brand recognition sense, whatever it may be. But that's not the main driver. And I think that's where so many people get it wrong. They're chasing numbers and things like that. And I get it from that standpoint. You've got to do that. We can't exist without a profit. That's the nature of the industry we're in, or any industry, frankly. You can't exist unless you're making money. But the minute you start striving for excellence in what you're doing, great things happen. Yeah, great things happen.
You probably need a bit of both, right? You probably need to have like the weird, I just want to do something as good as I can, and then you need the other side of it, which is I need to be able to sell this thing that I've done.
Yeah, of course.
Right? But that's what Cullen's for.
Awesome. Okay, well, mate, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and it's given us a bit of an insight, not only into Nodus and what you're setting out to achieve, not only for the brand, but with your designs and also the community you're trying to grow and develop, not only for the consumers but for the makers. And I think that's a great way to sort of round this off and bring it to an end, mate.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you for coming in and spending the time with us. And please tell the people, where they can find you.
Sure. Well, so thanks for having me.
By all means, mate, anytime.
Nodus Watches, that's Nodus Watches on Instagram, or noduswatches.com. And then my personal email is wesley@noduswatches.com.
Perfect. Well, guys, please head over. Keep an eye out for this contrail. I've had hands on with it, and my name's going down on the list, 100%. That's an epic piece. So yeah, please keep an eye out. Head over, give these guys the support and love, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Lovely job.